must admit, I don't make that many cheesecakes at home, so luckily Trish is here to make me a giant cheesecake.
Quite right. Before we get started, can you pop the white chocolate melts on to melt down for the cheesecake? We're going to make a white chocolate bistro cheesecake today with pine nuts and apricot glaze. And I know that when I come and visit Justine, I usually say something like, this is my favourite. But, well, what can I say? There are a lot of favourites. Yeah. So this is my favourite cheesecake, particularly of the baked cheesecakes.
And I like the combinations, like you said, pine nuts, apricot glaze, white chocolate. I haven't tried it before, so I'm very interested to see how it all comes together.
Absolutely terrific. Yeah. And as I say, I've sort of gone up a notch with this one now.
So I've just got that in a bain-marie and just gently melting it, white chocolate. Obviously you don't want too hot, well, with any chocolate.
That's right.
You don't want it to overheat or else it will seize. That's what you've taught me, Trish.
Well, it will, and it will burn. So it needs to just be over, just very gently simmering water. And the water doesn't need to be in contact with the bottom of the bowl. So just 2 or 3 centimetres is usually enough. So that just needs to melt down, and then we can get on with the rest. We need to start at the start with the base. So we need to combine together some biscuit crumbs.
Any just dried biscuit you can get from a supermarket?
Yes, dried biscuits, and you can put them in the food processor. If you don't have a processor, you can just put them in a bag that you can seal and bash that out with a rolling pin. That will make them into nice fine crumbs too. The beauty of cheesecake bases is that you can actually mix it up a bit. You can always add a little bit of extra spice. I always think a touch of cinnamon or a little ginger or nutmeg or mixed spice added to the crust can give it a little bit extra zing. The other thing too is that if you've got, like, say, 1.25 cups of crumbs, you can always take out 1/4 cup of crumbs and mix in, say, chopped nuts or some coconut or something like that, depending on what the filling is. So sometimes with a chocolate, like a milk chocolate or a dark chocolate filling, it's nice to actually use maybe some roasted almonds or some coconut instead. So very quickly just mix those together, and then that's going to go into the base of a 24 centimetre springform pan. I always find with a baked cheesecake, it just needs slightly more care. They're not any more difficult to make, but you just need to consider a couple of points. Firstly, because it's going to go into the oven and we're using cheese and eggs, which are kind of delicate things really, and we've also added the chocolate, so we don't want the temperature to be too severe. We're going to use a lower temperature, but we'll also protect the cheesecake a little bit by making sure that the springform pan is lined, and that higher collar helps to protect the top from becoming overcooked and over browned.
Look at this chocolate, Trish, ready to
Beautiful.
go. Smooth and silky. Put that to the side.
So this just needs to be spread out with the back of a spoon. Some people like to use the bottom of an old glass.
Oh yeah, it's good, Trish.
Yeah, to keep it nice. And it's not overly thick here.
Very easy, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't take any time at all, and it's a real crowd pleaser usually.
All right, well, that's perfect.
Into the fridge, and we just let that chill down while we're making the filling.
Okay, so we're just going to let that set. And
let it firm. Off we go. All right, so the base for any cheesecake is cream cheese. So we've got 3 blocks of Philadelphia here, and these have been softened.
Yeah, very important, isn't it? Because if it's not softened, we're going to have big lumps in it, and we want that smooth consistency.
So let it sit out on the bench if you've got the time. Otherwise, you can soften each block in the microwave for about 30 seconds on high. Okay, so what we need to do now is just to beat it really carefully. The main thing is with the baked cheesecake is that we don't whip too much air into it, because the more air we whip in, the more air kind of has to come out when we bake it. So there's much greater chance of it actually developing cracks and things on the top. And whilst the cracks don't affect the wear or the eating, they don't look so pretty when you're serving it to guests. So
just on a low speed there, so it just smooths out just a little bit.
Absolutely. So that's why it needs to be nice and soft before you start. All right, we need a couple of other ingredients. Can I have that sugar, please, Justine?
Yes, so that's what, about 1 cup of sugar there.
A cup of caster, and then if you could crack 3 eggs for me, that would be fantastic.
Do that.
So essentially it's just bringing those ingredients together.
Cheesecake, where's it originally come from?
I think it originally comes from the Greeks, thousands and thousands of years ago. But from what I know about bistro cheesecakes, which is not a huge amount, I understand they originated in New York because the baked cheesecake thing started from the delis there in New York.
I do want to go to America just to try their cheesecakes because they are famous for them.
They certainly are.
So 1 egg at a time for this?
Oh, I don't think it's going to matter too much. In you go.
throw them in.
Okay, so we just need to get all those ingredients together. A couple of, an extra one there. We've got some sour cream to add, which will add to the richness of the cheesecake, which will be beautiful. And the secret ingredient we have there, the chocolate. Now that's cooled down beautifully. That melted really easily over the hot water. And I guess when you've got real chocolate, like these are, the melts, the Cadbury melts, you get that beautiful gloss and sheen there. And that's going to help to enrich the filling as well. There we go. Okay. That should be enough. That looks beautiful and smooth. So we just need to take that off now and we can put that into the prepared base.
There we go, Trish.
Okay, just scrape off that. Oh, there's a little bit there. Scrape off a bit extra. Don't want to leave any behind.
Right. Do you want me to hold that while we go this way?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so that's going into the prepared base. It needs to go into a nice warm oven. Not too hot though, because it's a bit like a custard. So we want it to be in a moderately slow oven. So that's approximately 160 degrees in a conventional oven. If you've got fan forced, it probably makes sense to drop the temperature back by about 20 degrees or so.
And how long is that cooking for?
Oh, I think the trick is, we might finish off with those pine nuts. I think the trick is with a baked cheesecake, not to overdo it. Remember that the cheese was firm to start with, so when it's cold it will be firm anyway. We've got the eggs helping to set, and as well you don't want to overcook it because there's eggs in there, so we need to have a nice sort of slow temperature and about 40 minutes or so. So when you get to about 40 minutes, come and have a look. It should be kind of nice and golden, and give it a bit of a wobble. If it's still wobbly in the centre, that's okay. I mean, if it's still wobbly on the edge, okay, it needs a little bit longer, but a wobbly centre is fine.
All right, well, I'll put that in the oven then.
Just before you do, a little tip with a baked cheesecake, just so that you keep the environment nice and moist in the oven. I always like to put a little dish of water in the bottom so it kind of makes it nice and steamy.
Okay, right, well, I'll follow you to the oven.
Okay.
Trish, the cake's set. It's cooled down nicely, perfectly golden on the top.
No cracks.
No
How good is that?
cracks, exactly.
Pretty pleased with myself too.
It's very good. And I'm going to take those tips with me next time I make a cheesecake, because it's important, isn't it? Just because it looks so much better when it's like that.
Oh, absolutely. It makes a big difference. You know, it's better to undercook than overcook in most circumstances.
And we've just got some apricot jam here that we've just gently heated up, and that's just to glaze it.
It'll give it a beautiful sheen. Okay, so we're just going to lift that over here now. Whoops, going to slide. Come on,
Beautiful cake.
Over you go.
standard.
Now all we need to do is to brush that lovely jam over the top, and it gives it a beautiful sheen. It's a little bit different, this one, because it's using pine nuts, and I think pine nuts are something that we usually associate with savoury.
Yeah.
But they just have the most beautiful flavour when they're toasted, and it just works so well on this cheesecake. It's an absolute winner. Now, if you're not partial to pine nuts, of course, you could use almonds easily, or walnuts, or pecan nuts, or macadamias would be fine too, but it really is a very special one.
Yeah, and the combination of the apricot too works quite nicely with
Absolutely.
it, I find.
So you've got the beautiful richness of the cream cheese, and then you've got that lovely sweet decadence of the white chocolate melts, and you know, it's an absolute treat, this one.
Do you know what it reminds me of, Trish? When you walk into a cafe and at the counter there, you've got the muffins, the brownies, and that beautiful cake. That's exactly what it looks like.
Yes, it is a beauty, and it's that beautiful richness with the white chocolate and the nuts, and it works a treat, and aptly named Bistro.
That definitely does justice to the name.
Yum.